They thought she was just another target. A late-night confrontation, two corrupt cops with badges. They wheeled like weapons, ready to humiliate and crush a woman who dared to challenge their authority. They're certain she's powerless, just another victim they can break and discard. But what they don't know, she's someone they never should have crossed. What follows is a relentless clash of power, corruption, and revenge, and the twist waiting at the end will leave you speechless. Stick around, because this story will turn everything you think you know on its head. And before we dive in, drop a comment below, tell us what time you're watching and where you're tuning in from. We can't wait to hear from you. It was late, and the rain had turned Savannah's cobblestone streets into slick, shimmering mirrors reflecting the soft glow of lampposts and the pale blue neon signs of upscale shops. The city felt like it was holding its breath, the air thick and cool with a sharp, wet chill. Inside the sleek, modern bistro at the corner of Whitaker and Gaston, warmth and elegance clashed against the damp night outside. It was the kind of place where polished oak and brass fixtures gleamed beneath the amber lighting, where patrons exchanged low conversations over wine glasses and finely plated dishes. Olivia Grant stepped into the restaurant, brushing the rain from her shoulders. She carried herself with an air of authority, the kind that turned heads and demanded attention even when she wasn't trying. In her tailored black suit and sharp heels, Olivia looked every bit the powerful woman she had worked decades to become. But this night, her eyes were tired, and the lines etched into her smooth, dark skin were deeper than usual. She had spent weeks preparing for this meeting, fighting through bureaucratic red tape to bring her new task force initiative to Savannah. And tonight, she was supposed to be here for a simple dinner with city officials. Nothing more. She arrived early, another habit drilled into her from years of relentless training and scrutiny. Preparation was survival. Olivia chose a table near the back, away from the bustling crowd but with a clear view of the door. She nodded politely to the server who approached, declining the menu for now. She wasn't here to eat. Not yet. As the minutes ticked by, Olivia's gaze drifted toward the restroom sign. She'd had little sleep and even less time to relax. Deciding she needed a moment to gather her thoughts, she rose from her seat and walked toward the narrow corridor leading to the restroom. The restroom was small but pristine, all white tiles and stainless steel. Olivia washed her hands, the cold water a welcome shock against her skin. She stared at her reflection, her own sharp eyes staring back with the same steely determination she carried everywhere. "You've dealt with worse, Olivia. This is just another negotiation. Another round of smiles and handshakes masking the real battles." Her fingers trembled slightly as she dried them, exhaustion slipping through the cracks of her disciplined exterior. But just as she began to steady herself, the door swung open so violently it crashed against the wall. The sharp sound splintered the quiet, making her shoulders tense. A man filled the doorway, his presence a wall of hostility. He wore a police uniform, the deep blue pressed and immaculate, his badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. His eyes were hard, narrowed into slits of suspicion, and something uglier. "What the hell are you doing in here?" he barked. His voice was sharp, cutting through the small, tiled space with a force that demanded submission. "This restroom is for paying customers only." Olivia straightened, her gaze locking onto his with the cool, unyielding precision of someone who had faced worse threats before. But the sheer aggression radiating from him was enough to make her skin prickle. "I'm here for a meeting," she said, her tone firm but measured. "I have every right to be here." "Meeting?" His lips curled into a sneer. "You don't look like the type who belongs here, especially not sneaking around the restroom." His gaze swept over her, judgment clear in his eyes. He was sizing her up, not as a person but as a problem to be dealt with. Olivia's nostrils flared, but she kept her composure. "I'm not sneaking around. I walked through the front door like everyone else. Now, if you'll excuse me, hold it." His voice cut her off like a blade. "You think you can just walk in here and do whatever you please? Show me some ID now." "For what reason?" Olivia asked, her voice sharper now. "I haven't done anything wrong." "You're trespassing," he snapped, his words coated in disdain. "And I'm not asking again. Show me your damn ID before I have you removed from the premises." Olivia reached into her bag slowly, making sure her movements were clear. Her mind raced, calculating the situation, analyzing the threat. This man wasn't just hostile, he was looking for a fight. She held out her ID, her fingers steady, despite the frustration boiling beneath her calm exterior. The man snatched it from her hand, his fingers brushing hers with deliberate roughness. He examined the ID like it was counterfeit, his eyes narrowing as he looked from the card to her face and back again. "What's this supposed to be?" he scoffed. "Some fake government ID you printed off the internet? You expect me to believe you're someone important?" Olivia's patience frayed. "It's a federal identification card, and if you'd actually look at it, instead of making assumptions, you'd see that I'm here on official business." His smirk deepened. "Official business, huh? Well, lady, I don't care who you think you are. People like you don't get special privileges here." There it was. The veiled insult. The words wrapped in enough plausible deniability to avoid outright condemnation. But Olivia heard it loud and clear. "People like you." The anger she kept at bay flared, but she forced herself to remain steady. "I'm waiting for a group of city officials. If you'd like to embarrass yourself in front of them by continuing this little power trip, be my guest." His eyes flickered with something between anger and confusion, but the arrogance returned just as quickly. "If you're here for some fancy meeting, then why are you skulking around the restroom? Trying to steal something? Plant a bomb?" Olivia felt her breath hitch, the accusation so absurd it almost stunned her. "You're out of line," she said, her voice low and cold. "And if you keep harassing me, you're going to regret it." The man stepped closer, his hand resting near his holster. "Is that a threat?" he growled. "It's a promise," Olivia shot back, her eyes blazing. "And you have no idea who you're dealing with." The silence stretched like a blade, sharp and unnerving. Olivia held her ground, her gaze locked on the officer's hostile glare. His name tag read Mason, but the way he carried himself puffed up, chest thrust forward like he was spoiling for a fight said far more than his name ever could. Olivia didn't back down. She had dealt with men like him before, bullies wrapped in uniforms, drunk on their own authority. But this was different. The venom in his words, the way his eyes scanned her with contempt, rather than curiosity at all, screamed something far uglier than just arrogance. This was pure, unfiltered disdain. Mason shifted his weight, his fingers twitching near his taser, as if he was daring her to make a wrong move. "You think you can walk in here and mouth off to me like you own the damn place?" He snapped. "You're trespassing. And last I checked, that's still against the law." Olivia drew in a deep breath, steadying herself. The small restroom felt even smaller with him crowding the doorway, blocking her only exit. She could hear the hum of conversation from the restaurant just beyond the door, but none of those voices were coming to her aid. She was on her own. "I'm here on official business," Olivia repeated, her voice measured and firm. "I have a meeting scheduled with city officials in less than 15 minutes. This is a misunderstanding, Officer Mason, but if you continue to harass me, you're going to find yourself facing much bigger problems than trespassing allegations." His expression twisted into something ugly, his lips pulling back in a sneer. "You're real good at throwing threats around, aren't you? But let me tell you something, fancy titles and fake badges don't mean shit to me. Especially not from someone like you." There it was again, that same rancid disdain wrapped up in words meant to cut deep. Olivia's fists clenched at her sides, but she kept her face calm. Letting him see how much his words affected her would only feed his hunger for control. "You've made your point, officer," she said, her voice tight but steady. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting to attend." Mason stepped forward, his body blocking hers as if daring her to try to push past him. "You're not going anywhere until I say so. And right now, I'm saying you're under suspicion for trespassing, and possibly worse. I'm going to need to search your belongings." Olivia's eyes widened. "Absolutely not. You have no probable cause and you know it. This is harassment, plain and simple." "Harassment?" Mason scoffed. "I'm just doing my job, making sure suspicious individuals don't cause trouble in places they don't belong." "And what exactly makes me suspicious, officer?" Olivia's voice was icy now, each word enunciated with careful precision. "The fact that I walked into a restroom? Or the fact that I'm not the kind of person you think deserves to be in a place like this?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, Mason's face faltered, the mask of authority slipping just enough for her to see the contempt simmering beneath. But then it was back, his eyes narrowing with renewed aggression. "Watch your tone," he growled. "You're the one making this difficult. All you had to do was cooperate. But no, you had to act like you're above the rules." "I'm not above the rules," Olivia said, her voice sharper now. "I'm abiding by them. But you're crossing the line, and you're about to learn that the hard way." "Oh, I'll be the judge of that," Mason sneered. His hand shot forward, grabbing her arm with a force that nearly made her stumble. His fingers dug into her skin, the grip more about exerting dominance than performing any legitimate duty. "Let go of me," Olivia snapped, her voice breaking through the shock that threatened to paralyze her. "Now, you think you can order me around?" Mason hissed. "I don't care who you claim to be. Around here, I'm the law. And you're nothing but trouble." His hand tightened, and Olivia could feel the heat of his fury radiating through his skin. He was losing control, unraveling right in front of her eyes. But it wasn't fear that bloomed in her chest, it was rage. Pure, undiluted rage. "Take your hand off me, Officer Mason," she said, her voice low and brimming with authority. "Or I will have you arrested for assaulting a federal officer." That gave him pause. For a split second, his eyes darted to the ID he had tossed aside, as if only now realizing the gravity of her words. But pride and prejudice were stubborn beasts, and Mason clearly wasn't one to back down. "Federal officer?" He mocked, his grip never loosening. "Lady, you must think I'm stupid, flashing some cheap ID and thinking I'll bow down to your bullshit? Nice try. I am the FBI chief overseeing the task force meant to improve relations between your department and the federal government," Olivia said, her voice as cold and sharp as steel. "And right now you're making a serious mistake." Mason's sneer only grew. "You think throwing big words around is going to save you? Out here, it's about respect, and you clearly don't have any." He shoved her back, hard enough that her shoulder slammed against the tiled wall. Pain flared through her arm, but Olivia refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. Instead, she met his gaze with pure defiance. "I warned you," Olivia said, her breath coming fast and sharp. "You just made the worst mistake of your career." Mason laughed, the sound grating and cruel. "Is that so? Because all I see is some uppity woman who doesn't know her place. And guess what? I'm about to teach you a lesson you won't forget." His hand moved toward his taser, the movement slow and deliberate. A threat, a challenge. Olivia's heartbeat thundered in her ears, but she held her ground. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something far bigger, and she wasn't about to back down. Olivia's patience was wearing thin, her frustration simmering just beneath the surface. But she refused to let Mason see it. She couldn't afford to show weakness, not now, not when he was so clearly reveling in her discomfort. His arrogance was palpable, thickening the air until it felt almost suffocating. The restroom felt colder somehow, the white tiles gleaming under the fluorescent lights like the walls of some sterile interrogation room. And, in a way, that's exactly what it had become, a test of her will, of her resilience. But Olivia had passed tests far more grueling than this. She just needed to keep her composure, Mason's fingers twitched at his taser, his gaze locked on her with a predatory hunger. It was the look of a man who thrived on control, who relished the chance to exert his authority over anyone he deemed beneath him. And right now, that target was Olivia, but she was done playing by his rules. "Enough," Olivia said, her voice ringing with authority. "I've given you every opportunity to de-escalate this situation. Instead, you've chosen to escalate it. So let me make myself perfectly clear. You are violating my rights. You are harassing a federal officer without cause. And you are committing assault." Mason's jaw clenched, a vein pulsing in his neck. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone like her. His eyes flashed with irritation, but also something else, something close to fear. "You really think you can scare me?" he sneered. "With your fancy words and fake badges? You're not the first liar I've dealt with, and you won't be the last." Olivia's gaze was steady, unwavering. "I'm not trying to scare you, Officer Mason. I'm trying to help you understand the gravity of your actions before it's too late. But if you insist on continuing down this path, then you're about to learn just how serious I am." Mason scoffed, his laughter harsh and grating. "Serious? Lady, you don't know the meaning of the word. Around here, you follow my rules. And my rule says you don't belong." "Your rules?" Olivia repeated, her tone edged with disbelief. "You really think your authority gives you the right to treat people this way? To disregard their rights because you don't like the way they look? Because that's what this is, isn't it? This has nothing to do with protocol or procedure. It's about your ego." Mason's eyes narrowed. "You don't get to talk to me like that. I will speak to you however I see fit." Olivia shot back. "Because I'm done being polite. I'm done giving you the benefit of the doubt. You've crossed the line, Officer Mason, and you're about to face the consequences." "Consequences?" Mason barked, his fingers tightening around his taser. "The only consequences happening here are the ones you're bringing on yourself. You could have just cooperated, could have kept your head down and walked away. But no, you had to make this a fight." "This was never a fight," Olivia said, her eyes blazing, "until you made it one." "Last chance," Mason snapped, his voice sharp and crackling with tension. "Hand over your bag. I'm searching it one way or another." "No," Olivia said simply, her defiance striking him like a slap. Mason's hand twitched, his expression twisting into something feral. "You're really pushing your luck, lady." "My luck?" Olivia's lips curved into a cold, humorless smile. "I think you're the one who's about to find out just how bad your luck truly is." "Big talk for someone who's about to be cuffed and thrown out of here," Mason snarled. Before Olivia could respond, the restroom door swung open again. This time, the man standing in the doorway wasn't some clueless bystander or nervous restaurant employee. It was Captain Samuel Hayes, head of the local precinct, and a man Olivia had known for years. "Officer Mason," Hayes said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. His tone was calm, but there was an edge to it, one that Mason seemed to recognize immediately. "What the hell is going on here?" Mason stiffened, his posture shifting from aggression to something closer to defensive apprehension. "Sir, one was just handling a potential trespassing situation." This woman," Hayes interrupted, his eyes narrowing as they shifted to Olivia, "is Olivia Grant, the FBI chief, who's here to help us establish a new task force, the one you were instructed to show respect and cooperation toward, the one you're currently harassing for no damn reason." Mason's face went pale, the blood draining from his cheeks so quickly it was almost comical. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. "Is that true, Olivia?" Hayes asked, his gaze flickering to her. "Has Mason been giving you trouble?" Olivia straightened her shoulders, her expression unreadable. "Yes, Captain. He's been obstructing me from leaving, accusing me of trespassing, and threatening to use force without justification. And if that weren't enough, he's made it abundantly clear that his actions are motivated by something other than protocol." Hayes' expression hardened, his jaw tightening as he turned his full attention to Mason. "Is that so? Because from where I'm standing, it sure as hell looks like you've crossed several lines, officer, including harassment, abuse of authority, and failing to identify a federal officer. Sir, one. I didn't know," Mason stammered, his bravado evaporating as his eyes darted between Hayes and Olivia. "No, you didn't care to know," Hayes snapped. "And that's a damn problem. One that's going to be addressed immediately." Olivia watched Mason's shoulders slump, the defiant energy draining out of him like air from a punctured tire. But even now, she could see the anger simmering beneath his shame, the way his fists clenched, his eyes burning with resentment. He wasn't apologetic. He was cornered, and that made him dangerous. "Captain, I appreciate your intervention," Olivia said, her voice calm but firm. "But this situation is far from over. Officer Mason's behavior needs to be formally addressed, and not just for my sake, but for anyone else he's targeted." Hayes nodded, his expression grim. "I understand. And I assure you, Olivia, this will be dealt with. Thoroughly." For the first time since Mason had stormed into the restroom, Olivia allowed herself to breathe. But the relief was fleeting. This was only the beginning, and something told her that Mason wasn't about to let things end here. The tension hadn't dissipated. If anything, it had thickened, curling through the air like smoke. Olivia could feel it pressing down on her chest, even as Captain Hayes attempted to smooth things over. His words of assurance were meant to comfort her, to let her know he would handle Mason's transgression. But Olivia had been in this game far too long to put her faith in promises alone, especially not when the man who had just tried to humiliate her was standing only feet away, his gaze burning with resentment. Mason remained where he was, his face flushed and his shoulders squared, as if he was still trying to cling to some scrap of authority. But the arrogance was gone, replaced by something much darker. His eyes narrowed at Hayes, and even more so at Olivia. There was rage there, not just anger at being reprimanded, but fury at having his control wrested away so publicly. Hayes turned to Mason, his expression icy. "I want you to leave the restaurant and wait for me at the precinct. We're going to have a conversation about what just happened, and I expect you to be there before I arrive. Do I make myself clear?" Mason hesitated, his lips parting as if he intended to argue. But the weight of Hayes's authority was too much. His mouth snapped shut, his fists clenched at his sides. "Yes, sir," Mason gritted out, his voice a low snarl. Without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the restroom, the door swinging closed with a violent clatter. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Hayes sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose before turning back to Olivia. His features softened, his tone dropping to something almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, Olivia. I swear I had no idea he'd pull something like this. Mason's always been a bit rough around the edges, but this..." Hayes shook his head, his frustration evident. "This is unacceptable." "Rough around the edges?" Olivia repeated, her gaze hardening. "What I just experienced goes way beyond rough. That man tried to intimidate me, humiliate me, and it's pretty clear that his motivations were rooted in something far worse than a simple misunderstanding." Hayes winced. "I know, and you're right. I won't make excuses for him, but I will make sure this is addressed thoroughly." Olivia folded her arms, her posture rigid. "I'm not asking for your reassurance, Sam. I'm asking for accountability. And not just for me. If Mason is willing to treat me like that, then I can only imagine how he treats others who don't have the authority or resources to defend themselves." Hayes's expression darkened. "You have my word. This isn't something I'm going to let slide. I'll launch a formal investigation into his conduct. And if it turns out there's more to this, more incidents like what just happened, then he's finished." "Good." Olivia's voice was flat, devoid of relief or gratitude. It was just a simple acknowledgement, a statement of what was required, because if you don't, I will. Hayes gave her a curt nod. "Understood. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to handle it first. I know Mason crossed a line hell, he bulldozed right through it. but I need you to trust me to do my job. Trust. It was a fragile thing, especially when it came to matters of justice and accountability. Olivia wanted to believe Hayes would handle the situation appropriately, but her instincts, honed over years of navigating power dynamics and systemic corruption, told her to proceed with caution. "I'll be watching," Olivia said, her tone clipped. "And if I feel for a second that this is being swept under the rug, I won't hesitate to take matters into my own hands." "I wouldn't expect anything less from you," Hayes replied, his gaze steady. "But I meant what I said. Mason will be dealt with." With that, Hayes excused himself, leaving the restroom and heading for the exit. Olivia watched him go, her mind already turning over the next steps. She couldn't afford to leave anything to chance. Mason's behavior had been more than just an overreach of authority. It had been a calculated attempt to humiliate her. And if he was willing to do that to someone in her position, then he was a danger to the very community he was meant to serve. Olivia returned to her table, her appetite now completely gone. She pulled out her phone, her fingers moving quickly, as she typed out a message to her assistant. "Find everything you can on Officer Rick Mason. Personnel files, complaints, disciplinary actions, anything and everything. I want a full dossier on my desk by tomorrow morning." She hit send, her thumb hovering over the screen for a moment before she slipped the phone back into her pocket. The adrenaline was still coursing through her veins, her body's fight or flight response refusing to subside. But this wasn't a situation she could simply walk away from. Not when Mason's actions had been so blatant, so unchecked. Hours later, Olivia sat in her office, the dim glow of her computer screen casting shadows across her face. She pored over files and documents, her eyes scanning every line with meticulous precision. Names, dates, complaints, it was all there. And as she delved deeper, a pattern began to emerge, one that painted Mason in an even darker light. There were formal complaints against him, allegations of excessive force, harassment, even racial profiling. Some were dismissed outright. Others were swept under the rug with vague excuses and inadequate investigations. And in almost every instance, Mason had walked away unscathed. Her phone buzzed, the vibration rattling against the polished surface of her desk. She glanced at the screen. It was her assistant. "Olivia, I've gathered everything you asked for. And there's something you need to see. Something big." Olivia's pulse quickened. "What is it?" "Mason's been leaking information to outsiders. And not just any outsiders. We're talking about extremist groups. Ones that have been responsible for some serious attacks over the past few years. And there's proof. Payment records, conversations, even encrypted messages that we managed to decrypt." Olivia's fingers tightened around her phone. The anger she had been suppressing boiled over, flooding her veins with a cold, merciless fury. This was far worse than she had anticipated. Mason wasn't just a bigot on a power trip. He was a criminal, a traitor. "Send me everything you have," Olivia said, her voice like ice. "And prepare a formal report." This just became something much bigger than harassment. And as she ended the call, Olivia knew one thing for certain: Mason's worst mistake wasn't harassing her in that restroom. It was underestimating her. And now, he was going to pay the price. Olivia barely slept that night. Her mind was too sharp, too alert, every thought slicing through the dark like a blade. The discovery her assistant had uncovered changed everything. What had started as an appalling encounter with a power-hungry cop had just escalated into something far more sinister. Mason wasn't just a bully with a badge. He was a direct threat to national security. As soon as dawn cracked over the Savannah skyline, Olivia was back in her office. The city below looked calm, serene even. But she knew better, knew the rot that festered beneath the surface, the unchecked corruption that thrived under the protection of power. And now, she had the proof she needed to root at least some of it out. Her assistant, Marcus, was already waiting for her when she arrived. The young man looked pale, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He held a thick folder in his hands, the kind of dossier that spoke of long nights and painstaking research. "I pulled everything I could find," Marcus said, his voice low and hurried. Mason's been careful, but not careful enough. The encrypted messages we cracked, they point to regular communications with several extremist groups. Not just conversations either. Financial transactions. Payments made in exchange for information. Olivia's eyes narrowed as she took the folder from him. And what kind of information are we talking about? Police schedules, tactical plans, internal memos about federal investigations? It looks like he's been feeding them intel for months, maybe longer. And from what I can tell, the money he's been receiving isn't chump change. It's substantial. Olivia flipped through the pages, her gaze skimming over the text with practiced precision. Every new revelation only deepened the icy pit forming in her stomach. It was worse than she'd thought. Much worse. "Do we have enough to make an arrest?" she asked. Her tone clipped. All business. Marcus hesitated. "Maybe, but it's complicated. A lot of what we have is circumstantial. Strong, but still circumstantial. We need something definitive. Something that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Mason's actions are criminal, not just unethical." "And what about Hayes?" Olivia pressed. "Does he know about this?" Marcus shook his head. "Not yet. I figured you'd want to handle that conversation yourself." Olivia nodded, her jaw tight. "Good. I'll speak to him. But first, I need to be sure of what we're dealing with." She spent the next few hours going over every piece of evidence, dissecting it until her eyes burned and her temples throbbed. There were messages, payment logs, surveillance footage bits, and pieces of a puzzle that painted a damning picture. But it still wasn't enough. She needed more, something irrefutable. When she finally looked up from her desk, the sun had climbed high into the sky. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. "Marcus, the first need you to track Mason's movements. Find out where he's been, who he's been meeting with, and most importantly, who he's been reporting to." Marcus's voice crackled over the speaker. "You think he's working for someone else?" "I think it's a possibility we can't ignore," Olivia replied. "If Mason is feeding intel to extremists, then he's not just acting out of greed or spite. He's being directed, manipulated, maybe even blackmailed. Whatever it is, I want to know the truth. And I want to know it now." "I'll get right on it," Marcus promised. "Good. And Marcus, be careful. If Mason suspects he's being watched, he won't hesitate to retaliate. And I doubt he'll play fair." There was a pause. Then Marcus's voice came back, steadier than before. "Understood. I'll be careful." Olivia hung up, her fingers gripping the phone so tightly, her knuckles turned white. This was bigger than she'd imagined, and if she wasn't careful, it could cost her everything. She made her way to the precinct later that afternoon, her heels clicking against the polished tiles with a force that matched the determination burning inside her. The officers she passed offered polite nods, though some looked away quickly, as if afraid to meet her gaze. Word of her confrontation with Mason must have spread already. Hayes was waiting for her in his office, his expression unreadable. He gestured for her to take a seat, but Olivia remained standing, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "Sam, we need to talk," she said, her voice low and controlled, "and I'm not here for pleasantries." Hayes frowned, his brow creasing with concern. "What's going on, Olivia?" "I've already put Mason on suspension pending a formal investigation. What more do you want?" "I want the truth," Olivia snapped. "And I think you need to hear what I've uncovered before you make any more decisions." She laid the folder on his desk, her fingers trembling only slightly. Hayes opened it, his eyes scanning the pages with increasing disbelief. By the time he reached the end, his face had gone pale. "Jesus Christ," Hayes muttered. "You're telling me Mason's been selling intel to extremists?" "It's all there," Olivia replied. "The messages, the payments, the connections. And this isn't just a case of bad policing, Sam. This is treason. And if we don't handle it the right way, it's going to blow up in our faces." Hayes ran a hand through his thinning hair, his eyes darting back and forth as if searching for answers that weren't there. Does anyone else know about this? Just me and Marcus. For now. But if we want to take Mason down, we need to build an airtight case. One that no one can dismiss or cover up. Hayes nodded slowly, his gaze hardening. All right, what do you need from me? I need access to Mason's records, his communications, everything. And I need your word that this investigation won't be compromised. Not by loyalty, not by politics, nothing. You have my word, Hayes said, his voice rough but sincere. If Mason's dirty, then he's out, no matter who he's working for or who's protecting him. Olivia studied his face, searching for any hint of deception. But Hayes looked back at her with the grim determination of a man who understood just how serious this was. Then let's get to work, Olivia said, her voice like iron. Because Mason isn't just a problem. He's a threat. And we're going to bring him down. The investigation into Mason's activities was moving fast. Too fast, if Olivia was being honest. But there was no other choice. The deeper she and her team dug, the more it became clear that they were dealing with something far more insidious than just a corrupt cop with a grudge. This was systemic, coordinated, and it went all the way to the top. Marcus had been relentless in his research. Days had blurred into nights and back into days again, the young man's dedication impressing even Olivia. He had combed through every digital footprint Mason had left behind, tracking conversations, payments, even physical locations. And what he found was disturbing. Mason wasn't working alone. The payments he had received from extremist groups were being funneled through multiple accounts, each more carefully hidden than the last. And the messages? They weren't just casual exchanges of information. They were directives, instructions, proof that Mason had been actively aiding these groups with strategic information that could put countless lives at risk. Olivia's blood ran cold when she read the transcripts. Plans to undermine police operations, coordinated attacks, targeting vulnerable communities. All of it traced back to Mason and his associates. The worst part, it wasn't just about greed. It was about ideology. Mason wasn't simply selling information for profit. He was driven by something far more dangerous: belief. His conversations were laced with rhetoric that left Olivia sick to her stomach. And the groups he was working with weren't just interested in stirring chaos. They were interested in domination. Olivia stared at the latest report Marcus had compiled, her hands gripping the edges of the paper so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had seen corruption before, had fought against it her entire career. But this was something else entirely. A cancer that had been allowed to grow unchecked for far too long. Marcus entered her office, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, but gleaming with determination. "I found something else," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something big." "What is it?" Olivia asked, bracing herself for the worst. "It's not just Mason," Marcus replied, dropping a thick folder onto her desk. "He's part of a network, a coordinated effort to infiltrate law enforcement agencies and redirect resources, sabotaging investigations, suppressing evidence, even targeting individuals who get too close to the truth." Olivia felt her stomach twist. "How far does this go?" Marcus shook his head. "Farther than we thought. Mason is just one of many, and the people pulling the strings, they're powerful, connected. If we go after him without building a rock-solid case, they'll bury us." Olivia's eyes darkened. "Then we build that case, whatever it takes, and we do it quickly." Marcus hesitated. "That's the other thing. We may not have as much time as we think." "What do you mean?" Olivia demanded. "Mason knows we're onto him," Marcus said. "I've been monitoring his communications. He's been trying to cover his tracks, moving money around, deleting files. But it's not just about protecting himself. It's about retaliation." Olivia's pulse quickened. "Retaliation against who?" "You," Marcus replied. "He knows you're leading the investigation, and he's not taking it lightly." A chill ran down Olivia's spine, but she refused to let it show. "What has he done?" "Nothing yet," Marcus admitted. but he's been in contact with someone higher up. And from what I can gather, they're planning to discredit you. Maybe worse. Olivia clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Let them try. I'm not backing down. I figured you'd say that, Marcus said with a grim smile. But you need to be careful. Mason's dangerous. And whoever he's working with, they're not going to play fair. Olivia nodded. I understand the risks, but that's not going to stop me. Marcus seemed to consider arguing, but he thought better of it. Instead, he handed her another folder, this one thinner, but no less important. This is everything we have on Mason's network. Names, locations, suspected affiliates. It's not complete, but it's a start. Olivia flipped through the pages, her gaze sharp and focused. You've done good work, Marcus. But we need more. We need something definitive, something they can't refute or twist. Marcus hesitated. There's one other thing. I haven't been able to confirm it yet, but there's a rumor, a meeting, tonight, somewhere outside the city. Mason's supposed to be there. Olivia's eyes narrowed. Where? A warehouse by the docks, Marcus replied. The location isn't secure. If he's meeting with his contacts, it's a risk, but it's also an opportunity. Olivia's mind raced, her instincts urging her to take action. If we can catch him in the act, we might be able to secure the evidence we need. It's dangerous, Marcus warned. If he sees you coming, he'll disappear. And if he knows you're the one who caught him, I can handle it, Olivia said, her tone leaving no room for argument. But I need you to gather a team, people we can trust. And I need you to be ready to move the moment I give the word. Marcus nodded, his expression resolute. I'm on it. As Marcus left her office, Olivia leaned back in her chair, her mind churning with possibilities. The risks were high. Too high, some might say. But she couldn't afford to play it safe. Not when lives were on the line. She reached for her phone and dialed Captain Hayes. He picked up after the first ring, his voice tense. Olivia, what's going on? We have a lead, Olivia said. A big one. But I need your help. Name it, Hayes replied. Olivia outlined the plan, her words sharp and precise. By the time she finished, Hayes sounded as determined as she felt. If Mason's meeting with his contacts tonight, we need to be ready, Hayes said. I'll have my team on standby. But Olivia, be careful. I will, she promised. But this is our best shot. We can't afford to miss it. As she ended the call, Olivia felt her nerves coil like a spring. Tonight would be a turning point. One way or another, things were about to change. Mason thought he could intimidate her, manipulate her, silence her, but he was wrong. And tonight, he was going to learn just how wrong he had been. Night had settled over the city like a thick, oppressive blanket. The air along the docks was sharp with the smell of salt water and rust, the faint creak of boats swaying in the current punctuating the otherwise heavy silence. Olivia stood at the edge of the warehouse's perimeter, her eyes narrowed as she took in the surroundings. She had come prepared, dressed in dark, tactical clothing, and equipped with a discreet earpiece. She looked every bit the seasoned investigator she was. But this wasn't just another operation. This was personal. Marcus had provided her with everything he could find about the meeting. The warehouse was an old, derelict building that had once served as a storage facility for shipping companies. Now, it was nothing more than a decaying shell, a perfect location for clandestine dealings. The thought that Mason had chosen this place felt almost fitting. A broken man meeting in a broken place. Through her earpiece, Marcus's voice crackled to life. I've got eyes on the outside. 2 guards near the entrance. Another one patrolling the west side. No sign of Mason yet. Olivia pressed her back against the cold steel of a cargo container, her breath steady. Any vehicles? 1. Black SUV parked out front. No plates. Whoever Mason's meeting with, they're trying to stay off the grid. Good. Keep monitoring. I'm moving in. Be careful, Marcus warned, his voice tight. If Mason realizes you're here, this could turn ugly fast. It already is ugly, Olivia muttered under her breath. But Marcus was right. Caution was key. This wasn't just about taking Mason down. It was about gathering the evidence she needed to ensure he stayed down. She crept forward, her footsteps nearly silent against the concrete. The shadows were her allies, wrapping around her like a cloak as she moved from cover to cover. The guards were vigilant, but not particularly disciplined. Their attention wandered, their postures slack. Hired muscle, she guessed. People who cared more about a paycheck than about the cause. Mason had aligned himself with. Through the cracked windows of the warehouse, Olivia could make out the faint glow of lights. A makeshift meeting room had been set up in the center of the cavernous space, folding chairs and tables arranged haphazardly. And there, standing near one of the tables, was Mason. He looked nervous, agitated. His hands twitched at his sides, his gaze flicking constantly toward the entrance, as if expecting trouble. Olivia could almost see the paranoia etched into his features, the way his shoulders hunched and his movements jerked with barely contained anxiety. But he wasn't alone. 3 other men were with him, their faces obscured by shadows. One of them was speaking, his voice low and steady, though Olivia couldn't make out the words. Whatever was being discussed, it wasn't friendly. Marcus's voice buzzed through her earpiece again. "I've got audio on the conversation. Patching it through now." There was a brief moment of static, then the voices came through, distorted but clear enough to understand. "This is getting out of hand, Mason," one of the men said, his tone harsh. "You were supposed to keep things quiet, but now you've got the feds breathing down our necks because you couldn't keep your head on straight." "I didn't ask for this," Mason snapped back, his voice tight with desperation. Olivia, she's the one pushing this. I tried to warn her off, but she wouldn't listen. She's determined to take me down." "Then you should have handled her," the other man growled. "Instead, you let her get too close. And now we've got a problem." Olivia's jaw clenched. So, they knew about her investigation. And they weren't just angry with Mason, they were blaming him for letting her get this far. "Just give me more time," Mason pleaded. "I can fix this. I can throw her off the trail. Make her look like the one in the wrong." One of the men laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "You had your chance, Mason, and you blew it. Now you're a liability." Panic flared in Mason's eyes, his breathing coming faster. No, I can still make this right. Just give me a chance, please." The silence that followed was heavy and brutal. The man who had laughed stepped forward, his figure looming over Mason's trembling form. "You've already made your bed," he said, his voice devoid of any trace of sympathy. "Now, you get to lie in it." Olivia's fingers tightened around the small recording device she held, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. This was it. Proof not only of Mason's betrayal, but of the larger conspiracy he was part of. But she couldn't act just yet. She needed more. Needed to find out who these men were and what their endgame was. Suddenly, the man speaking to Mason turned his head, his eyes sweeping toward the window where Olivia crouched. She ducked down, her pulse spiking, as she pressed her body against the cold metal surface. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "I've been made. I need a distraction, now." "I'm on it," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the urgency of her request. "Hold tight." Moments later, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the warehouse. The guards outside shouted in confusion, their footsteps pounding against the pavement as they rushed to investigate the source of the noise. Inside, Mason and the others whipped around, their attention drawn away from Olivia's position. She took the opportunity to slip further into the shadows, her movements quick and calculated. "I've cleared you an exit," Marcus said, "but you need to move now. They're going to figure out what's going on any second." "Copy that," Olivia replied, her voice calm even as adrenaline surged through her veins. "Keep monitoring their communications. I need to know who Mason's reporting to." "Already working on it," Marcus assured her. "But Olivia, be careful. If they know you're onto them, they're not going to just sit back and wait for you to take them down." "I know," Olivia said, And that's exactly why I'm not stopping until this is over. She slipped away from the warehouse, her mind racing with possibilities. She had managed to gather enough evidence to implicate Mason. But the others? They were still a mystery, and until she knew who they were, she couldn't afford to make a single mistake. As she disappeared into the night, her determination only grew stronger. Whatever it took, she would see this through, because this wasn't just about Mason anymore. It was about something much bigger, and she was ready to face it head-on. Olivia didn't stop moving until she was several blocks away from the warehouse. Her breathing was labored, the cold night air cutting through her lungs like ice. But her mind was sharper than ever, her senses heightened by the rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She ducked into a narrow alley, her back pressed against the damp brick wall as she pulled her phone from her pocket. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Marcus, the line ringing only once before he picked up. "Tell me you made it out," Marcus said, his voice tight with worry. "I'm out," Olivia replied, her tone clipped. "But they know someone was watching. They'll be on high alert now." "Damn," Marcus muttered, "but at least you got something." "I managed to record most of their conversation before everything went to hell." "And, Olivia, it's bad." "Worse than we thought?" Olivia asked, though she already knew the answer. "Way worse," Marcus confirmed. "Mason's not just working with extremists. He's part of a full-blown network. They're feeding him intel, funding him, using him as a tool to manipulate the system from the inside." "Did you get any names?" Olivia pressed, her frustration mounting. "Just code names, mostly." But there was one name that kept coming up, someone they referred to as the broker. Apparently, he's the one calling the shots. And from what I can gather, he's got people everywhere. Not just here, nationally. Olivia felt a chill crawl down her spine. This wasn't just a local conspiracy. It was something much larger, something with reach and influence far beyond what she had anticipated. "Do we have any way of tracing the broker?" Olivia asked, her voice low. "Working on it," Marcus replied. "But whoever this guy is, he's careful. No digital footprint, no paper trail. It's like he doesn't exist." Olivia clenched her jaw, her frustration boiling over. "Well, he exists, and I'm going to find him." "You sure you're not pushing this too hard?" Marcus asked. "These people, whoever they are, they're dangerous. And if they know you're on their trail—" "That's exactly why I can't stop," Olivia interrupted. "If they're willing to go this far, to infiltrate law enforcement and manipulate entire communities, then they need to be brought down. All of them." "I figured you'd say that," Marcus sighed. "Okay, I'll keep digging. But you need to be careful, Olivia. I mean it. If something happens to you, nothing's going to happen to me," Olivia said firmly. "I'm not going to give them the satisfaction." But even as she spoke, the words, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the danger pressing down on her. She was in over her head, and the worst part was, she knew it. By the time she returned to her apartment, exhaustion was dragging her down like a lead weight, but sleep wasn't an option, not when so much was at stake. She spent the next several hours poring over the information Marcus had gathered, her mind working furiously to piece everything together. Mason's betrayal had been bad enough, but this was a full-blown conspiracy. And if what Marcus had uncovered was true, then they were dealing with something far more insidious than she had ever imagined. Her phone buzzed, jolting her out of her thoughts. It was Hayes. "Olivia," he said, his voice strained. "I need to see you. Now, is everything okay?" Olivia asked, her heart thudding in her chest. "No," Hayes replied bluntly. "It's Mason. He's been arrested." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. "Arrested? By who?" "The feds," Hayes said. "Apparently, someone leaked information about his involvement with extremist groups. They showed up at his house this morning and took him into custody." Olivia's mind raced, her thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and anger. Who leaked the information? "That's the thing," Hayes said. "Nobody knows. It wasn't me, and it sure as hell wasn't you. Whoever did this, They were trying to cut us out of the equation. Olivia's fingers tightened around her phone. This was exactly what she had been afraid of. Someone else pulling the strings, manipulating the situation to suit their own agenda. "Where is he now?" Olivia demanded. "Being held at a federal facility," Hayes replied. "And from what I hear, they're not wasting any time. They're charging him with everything from conspiracy to treason." Olivia closed her eyes, her breath hitching. This was moving too fast. Much too fast. "Marcus needs to see everything," Olivia said. "All of the files. All of the recordings. We need to make sure nothing is being buried or twisted." "Already on it," Hayes replied. "But Olivia, if they've got Mason, then the people he was working with are going to start covering their tracks. This could all blow up before we even have a chance to finish building our case." "Then we need to move faster," Olivia said, her determination hardening. "I'm not letting them get away with this." Hayes hesitated before responding. "You're really not going to let this go, are you?" "No," Olivia replied, her voice like steel. "Because if we don't stop them now, then it's only a matter of time before they do this again. And next time, it could be worse." There was a long pause before Hayes finally spoke again. "All right, you've got my support. Whatever you need, just say the word." "Thank you, Sam," Olivia said, her shoulders relaxing just a fraction. "I'll be in touch." She ended the call, her fingers trembling as she set the phone down. Mason's arrest was a setback, a distraction, and whoever had orchestrated it was clearly trying to derail her investigation. But Olivia wasn't about to be thrown off course. Not now. Not when she was so close to the truth. She pulled her laptop toward her, her eyes narrowing as she began compiling everything she had gathered. The conversations, the recordings, the names. It was all connected. She just needed to find the missing piece. And she would. No matter what it took, Mason had tried to intimidate her. His associates had tried to cover their tracks, but Olivia was relentless. And she wasn't going to stop until every last one of them was brought to justice. The broker, the network, the corruption that had infiltrated her city, it all ended here. Olivia sat in her office, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, as she stared at the stacks of files and notes scattered across her desk. The room felt colder than usual, the air conditioning humming softly in the background as if mocking her frustration. Mason was in custody, but the problem hadn't gone away. If anything, it had only grown more complicated. Whoever had leaked the information to the feds had done so with precision. It was a surgical strike, designed to remove Mason from the board before she could extract everything he knew. It wasn't about justice. It was about control. And whoever was pulling the strings was still out there, operating in the shadows. Her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with Marcus's name. She answered immediately. "I've been digging," Marcus said, his voice strained. "Whatever network Mason was part of, they're in full damage control mode. Accounts are being wiped. Communications are going dark. It's like someone flipped a switch." "So they know we're onto them," Olivia replied, her tone grim. "Yeah. And it gets worse. I found something buried in Mason's communications. A series of coded messages sent out just before he was arrested. From what I can tell, he was trying to warn his contacts that something was coming, that someone was getting too close." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "And those messages, they mentioned me, didn't they?" "They did," Marcus confirmed. "He made it clear you were the one spearheading the investigation. And now, well, let's just say you've become a target." Olivia leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the ceiling as she tried to process everything. She had known from the beginning that pursuing Mason would be dangerous. But now, it wasn't just about him. It was about something far bigger, something that could tear apart everything she had worked for. "What about the broker?" Olivia asked, her voice low. "I'm still trying to track him down," Marcus said. "But whoever this guy is, he's good, keeps his distance, never communicates directly. Everything goes through intermediaries, and most of them are either missing or dead." Olivia closed her eyes, her mind racing. We're running out of time, Marcus. If they're shutting everything down, that means they're planning something. Something big. That's what I'm afraid of, Marcus admitted. But I'm not giving up. I've got a few leads I'm chasing down, and I think I might have found someone who can help us. Who? Olivia demanded, her curiosity piqued. A former associate of Mason's. Someone who got cut loose when he became too much of a liability. From what I've gathered, he's got a grudge. And he's willing to talk. Where is he? Olivia asked, her pulse quickening. Downtown. Some dive bar he's been holed up in for weeks. I sent the address to your phone. Olivia glanced at her screen, the message blinking back at her. All right, I'll pay him a visit. But Marcus, be careful. Whoever's behind this, they're playing for keeps. I know, Marcus replied. But so are we. Olivia ended the call, her determination renewed. She grabbed her coat, her movements sharp and precise. If there was someone out there willing to talk, then she needed to hear what they had to say. And she needed to hear it now. The bar was exactly what she expected. Dark, grimy, the kind of place where anonymity was both a promise and a warning. Olivia pushed through the door, her eyes adjusting to the dim light as she scanned the room. It didn't take long to find her man. He was slumped over a table near the back, a glass of something amber clutched in his shaking hand. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled. But the moment Olivia approached, his gaze snapped to hers with a wary intensity. You're the one looking into Mason, he said, his voice rough and slurred. I am, Olivia replied, her tone measured. And I hear you have information. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't, he muttered, his gaze darting around the room like a cornered animal. Depends on what's in it for me. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes boring into his. What's in it for you is a chance to walk away from this with your life. Because if Mason's people find out you've been talking, they'll bury you. And if I walk away now, I won't be around to stop them. The man swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. You think you're untouchable? They've already got eyes on you. They know what you're doing, and they're not happy about it. I don't care if they're happy, Olivia shot back. I care about the truth. And you're going to give it to me. Now. He hesitated, his fingers trembling against the glass. Fine. Mason was working for someone, but he wasn't the only one. There are others. People you wouldn't expect. High level. Connected. Names, Olivia demanded. I need names. I can't. I don't know all of them, but I know the broker. The one who calls the shots. He's not just some anonymous puppet master. He's someone with real power. Someone with connections inside law enforcement, politics, even the feds. Olivia's eyes narrowed. And where do I find him? The man shook his head, his gaze dropping to the table. You don't. Not unless he wants you to. But there's a meeting, one that's supposed to happen soon. A gathering of all his top players. If you can find out where it's happening, you might have a shot. When? Olivia pressed. Tomorrow night. Midnight, somewhere outside the city. That's all I know, I swear. Olivia stared at him, her mind racing. This was the break she had been waiting for. But it was also a trap. She could feel it in her bones. If you're lying to me, Olivia began. I'm not, the man said, his voice trembling. I just want to get out of this. And if you're smart, you'll do the same. Olivia straightened, her gaze cold. I'm not running, and neither should you, because if I'm going down, I'm taking all of them with me. She turned and walked out of the bar, her mind already forming a plan. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The night was thick with tension, the air sharp and cold as Olivia made her way toward the abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the city. Marcus had managed to confirm the location only hours before, his voice tinged with both excitement and fear as he relayed the information. The meeting was happening tonight, and if Olivia wanted to bring this entire operation down, she had to be there. She had called Hayes, briefed him on everything she knew. His response had been immediate, his promise of backup unwavering. But Olivia couldn't wait for the bureaucracy to catch up. This was her fight, her mission, and she wasn't about to let anyone take it from her. She moved like a shadow through the darkness, her footsteps light and silent against the cracked pavement. The complex loomed ahead, its skeletal structures rising like twisted monuments to a forgotten era. Broken windows glinted under the pale moonlight, their jagged edges like teeth waiting to tear apart anything that dared enter. Marcus's voice crackled through her earpiece. "You're getting close. I've got eyes on the perimeter. Looks like at least a dozen guards, all armed. This place is locked down tighter than a fortress." "I expected as much," Olivia whispered. "Any sign of Mason?" "Nothing yet. But if he's here, he's not going to make it easy for you." "He never has," Olivia replied. "Keep monitoring. And be ready to send that evidence packet if things go south." Already prepped and waiting, Marcus assured her. "Just be careful, Olivia. These people aren't playing games." "Neither am I," Olivia said, her tone like steel. "Stay on the line. I'll check in when I'm inside." She slipped past the guards with calculated precision, her years of training kicking in like second nature. Every step was measured, every movement deliberate. The complex was a maze of rusted metal and crumbling concrete, but Olivia navigated it with a confidence born from necessity. Voices echoed through the corridors, their tones low and urgent. She followed them, her pulse pounding in her ears as she crept closer to the heart of the operation. Finally, she reached a massive chamber, its high ceilings lined with catwalks and scaffolding. And there, in the center of the room, was Mason. He looked different, haggard, desperate. His shoulders hunched as he argued with two men Olivia didn't recognize. But it was clear from their posture, their calm authority, that they were the ones in control. She stayed hidden, her phone recording everything. The conversation was heated, Mason's voice rising as he tried to justify himself. "I did everything you asked," Mason snapped, his fists clenched at his sides. "I kept her distracted. I tried to derail the investigation, but she's relentless, and now she's closing in." "That's because you failed," one of the men replied, his tone smooth and cold. "You allowed your ego to cloud your judgment, and now we're cleaning up your mess." "I can fix this," Mason insisted. "Just give me another chance." The second man shook his head, his expression pitiless. "Your chances ran out the moment you became a liability. The broker has no use for failures." Mason's face twisted with panic. "Please, I can prove myself. Just give me something, anything." The men exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. Then, without warning, one of them drew a gun. The shot echoed through the chamber, sharp and final. Mason crumpled to the ground, his eyes wide with shock before they glazed over. Olivia's breath caught in her throat, her body frozen as the scene unfolded. They had executed him. Just like that. A man who had been part of their network, discarded the moment he became inconvenient. The men began talking again, their words laced with casual indifference. Olivia forced herself to focus, to capture every detail. "She's still out there," one of them said. "The FBI chief. If she's not dealt with, she could unravel everything." "Then make sure she's dealt with," the other man replied. "The broker wants this operation clean. No loose ends." Olivia's blood ran cold. They weren't just going to cover their tracks. They were going to come after her, and if she didn't act now, they would succeed. She retreated the way she had come, her mind racing. As soon as she was clear of the complex, she broke into a run, her breath burning in her lungs as she made her way to her car. "Marcus," she gasped, her voice raw, "send the packet. Now. Everything. Every piece of evidence. It needs to go public before they can bury it." "I'm on it," Marcus replied. "But Olivia, what happened?" "Mason's dead," she said, her voice hollow. "And whoever's behind this is already planning their next move. We need to get ahead of them. And we need to do it now." "Consider it done," Marcus said. "I'll make sure the files go to every major outlet. They won't be able to hide from this." "Good," Olivia replied, her hands gripping the steering wheel as she sped away from the complex. "Because I'm done playing by their rules. It's time to take the fight to them." And as the city lights blurred past her, Olivia knew this was only the beginning. The network she had uncovered was vast, powerful, and willing to kill to protect itself. But she was ready to tear it apart piece by piece, because this wasn't just about justice. This was about survival, and she had no intention of losing. What we just witnessed is more than just a tale of betrayal, corruption, and justice. It's a reminder of something much deeper, something that resonates with all of us, especially those who have lived long enough to see how the world truly works. Olivia's journey teaches us that evil doesn't always come at you with a snarl and a fist. Sometimes it wears a uniform. Sometimes it hides behind wealth and influence, and sometimes it pretends to be your ally. But Olivia also shows us that courage, persistence, and integrity are powerful weapons. No matter how deep the corruption runs, standing firm for what is right can shake even the most sinister foundations. The truth may be buried, but it can never be destroyed. And it's people like Olivia, people like you, who refuse to back down, who demand accountability, who make the world a better place. For those of us who have seen the world change, who have fought our own battles and carried our own scars, Olivia's story is a testament that the fight for justice is never truly over. But it's a fight worth having. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or the importance of standing up for what's right, please like, share, and subscribe. And leave a comment telling us about a time when you had to stand your ground, because your voice matters. And together, we can keep shining a light where others want darkness to reign.